welcome back. As we promised, we are going to dedicate the lion's share of our episode to discuss the most recent developments in the Middle East, particularly after the U.S. struck 3 Iranian nuclear sites only 24 hours ago, and this means that now the United States is involved into the Iranian-Israeli conflict. To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to have with us via phone Ambassador Youssef, Zada, member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us, sir, and a very good morning.
Good morning to you.
Ambassador Zada, in your opinion, after the current escalation and after, as I said in my intro, the involvement of the United States into the conflict, what are the expected scenarios?
Well, that's a very good question. There are several expected scenarios, actually, for the continuation or containment of this escalation based on the available information that we all see. Now, the first one would be that Iran, well, it has vowed retaliation, with its top diplomat stating that the U.S. attacks will have overlasting consequences, and that Tehran reserves all options and could target U.S. bases in the region. Now, we know that the U.S. has many bases in the Gulf region, so they intend to harass shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. They will intensify proxy attacks by groups like the Houthis. Iran's President Mossad Pezeshkian warned of a more devastating response if the attacks continue, suggesting a willingness to escalate. So that's one of the options. The second scenario would be increasing the attacks on Israel, involving ballistic missiles, straining U.S. and Israeli missile defenses. Now, the third one would be a broader regional war, throwing in the U.S. allies, example Saudi Arabia, and Iran's partners, example Russia and China, risking a prolonged conflict. Well, this is not very, it's a bit far-fetched. Now,
Hello? Hello? Oh, it seemed that we do have some technical difficulties here. We were discussing the latest situation and the latest developments after the U.S. involvement into the Israeli-Iranian war, and with destroying or attacking, to be accurate, 3 sites. There were a lot of world reactions after the latest attacks, and yesterday the UN Security Council convened for the third time to discuss the situation, and there were many UN envoys who were keen to urge all sides to de-escalate and to practice self-restraint. I think once again we do have our dear guest, Ambassador Youssef Zada. Ambassador Zada, are you here with me?
Yes, hello, I'm with you, of course.
Sir, we were speaking about the scenarios, and you told us, or you started to tell us about some of the scenarios, and now I'm all ears, I'm listening.
Thank you. We were talking about the third scenario, which is a broader regional war, which I think would be a bit far-fetched. And the fourth one would be more U.S. strikes to come, with the U.S. deepening the involvement with Israel. And then I would think a fifth scenario would be a global energy economic crisis with the surge of oil and gas prices if the conflict persists for weeks.
Sir, yeah, yesterday there was a UN Security Council meeting convening for the third time, and we all listened to the UN envoys coming from all over the world, whether from world powers like the Europeans, I mean here, the UK, France, and to continue with that, I'm not going to speak that much about what they have said, but they all spoke about de-escalation and about practicing self-restraint and about taking into consideration that the world cannot endure another war, and particularly the Middle East. How do you see these words, and how do you see there should be a reaction now from the 3 sides, Iran, Israel, and the United States?
Well, actually, I've been following, as many as others, the UN General Security Council meetings yesterday, and we all listened to some of the envoys' words talking about the crisis. Now, there is a resolution to be issued today, I would think, New York Times, something around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, presented by three countries, by Russia, China, and Pakistan. Now, yes. What is the resolution about? It's about ceasing of the military operations and back to the negotiating table, naturally. So I expect perhaps an American veto to this as well, because, of course, we know the alignment between the U.S. and Israel when it comes to the conflict of Iran.
But, sir, also I was mentioning the international community's reactions, because yesterday, in particularly the speech of the UK and France envoys speech, they spoke about diplomacy, and they mentioned the Geneva talks which took place on Friday, as the representatives from the E3 met with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and they were talking about should be negotiations as a main and sustainable way to reach peace and to end the crisis in this way. I mean, military action is not at all the way to end such crises. How do you see the keenness of such countries to mention again and again diplomacy and their negotiations as the only way to guarantee an end to the current escalation and to the current crisis?
Well, not surprisingly, I mean, a few days ago there were meetings between the three countries, Britain, France, and the European Union, and Germany, sorry, and the European Union, talking with Iran about the nuclear program. So this is, I mean, Iran has been involved in the negotiations for a long time now. And as we know, there were meetings in Istanbul throughout the past few days of the Organization of Islamic Countries, where the representative of Iran met with many countries. And as you said, they are urging for peace talks. Now, of course, if you're hit by a military strike, the last thing you'd think about would be peace talks, except when you're in a position of strength. And I think Iran is sort of very unhappy about this American strike, which is very natural. And so the peace talks would take some time. The UN would be involved more, as I said today. So let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens, but also let's take some indications from the rhetoric of both sides. You know, their words are indicating that the actions of the coming events, or the actions they are going to take, are going to be harsh on the ground. Whenever we listen to Araghchi and to even the Iranian President Pezeshkian and to the words of American President Donald Trump, this means that they are not going to listen to what we are always describing as the voice of reason. When we look at what Donald Trump wrote or the reactions of the Iranian side, how do you see the coming action? I mean, in the very near future, very much expected that more escalation is going to happen?
Yes. Well, more escalation from Iran's side. This has been promised by the Iranians in retaliation to the American strikes. Now, as we know, the Iranians are you know, they're very smart people. They've been on the negotiating table for years. They've been under sanctions from the West for many years. And, of course, the countries that are talking for peace talks are in alliance with the United States. I mean, we're talking about the Western group. So, not to be biased with Iran, but I'm saying that, you know, if you have a country which is having airstrikes from the West, I mean, what do you expect? I mean, of course, they would like to retaliate, and at the same time agree to the negotiating table as soon as possible as well.
There were some voices from the Congress yesterday which said clearly that what Donald Trump did is unconstitutional, and that just to attack another country, this should have a congressional approval, and this should be because of a direct threat to the United States, and this is not the case. How do you see this reaction, sir, and how do you see the congressman's role in the coming period? Are they going to continue supporting their leader, or they are going to stick to these words, the word unconstitutional and the statements like this war is not ours and stuff like that?
Very good question. Well, as we all have seen ever since last January when President Trump took office, I mean, he doesn't abide by any constitution when it comes to the U.S.
Yeah.
Working in New York before as an ambassador, I would say that domestically there's a division within the U.S. with some Republicans supporting the strikes and others alongside the Democrats, like, for instance, Senator Tim Kaine, warning against another forever war. Kaine's resolution to require congressional approval for further military action against Iran reflects public sentiment, with polls showing, as I read 2 days ago, 66% of Americans opposing war with Iran. Now, critics argue that even a successful strike may not achieve lasting objectives, risking protracted conflict with significant U.S. casualties and resources. Meanwhile, allies like Qatar and Iraq have urged de-escalation, emphasizing diplomacy to prevent irreversible consequences. However, I would say some sources suggest the possibility for de-escalation, noting Iran's signal for nuclear talks if the U.S. refrains from further strikes.
As you've kindly mentioned, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, also the United Arab Emirates, and above all, there was a statement which was released from our foreign ministry really condemning the escalation and urging all sides for self-restraint and to de-escalate, because, as I said also, the whole world and particularly the Middle East region cannot endure another war, if you agree with me on that.
Exactly. I mean, we've been seeing the tension in Gaza for months now. We've been seeing tension up north, of course, in Ukraine. I was ambassador to Ukraine at one time. And, well, Trump's promises to defuse the Ukraine war has gone to the wind. So we've been to the southern borders. I mean, as Egyptians, we've seen the Sudanese influx into the country by the hundreds of thousands because of the war in Sudan. So, I mean, the Middle East really can't afford another shocking wave of a war, especially this war that's going on with very heavy weaponry between Israel and Iran, and now with the U.S. involved.
Amen to that, sir. And to continue covering the issue from all sides, because it's now very important to speak about the IAEA and the speech of Rafael Grossi yesterday, and to find that all the participants or all the attendees were really keen to thank the IAEA for their efforts and to support Grossi, who said more than once that he is ready to go anywhere and to continue himself with exerting the utmost efforts to de-escalate the situation. Do you think that the UN and the IAEA as a UN organization can play a pivotal role to end the crisis and to give a hand for all other parties who are trying hard to de-escalate the situation, sir?
Iran has been talking with the International Atomic Agency for years, as we all know that the Iranian nuclear program has been set since something like 30 years ago, so it's not something new. And with several people who headed this UN organization, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran had difficulties. I mean, one of them was El Baradei at one time. But speaking of the efforts of the IAEA to resolve the conflict with Iran, I don't think it's possible except with direct negotiations between the hostility parties, IAEA, the U.S., Israel, Iran, perhaps indirectly, and the European Union. So I think the Energy Agency is trying to do its role, but not a very effective one, really.
I'd like to turn back to the rhetoric or to the words to what was written even on social media, whether from American President Donald Trump or from Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian or his foreign minister. Because since the very early hours after the U.S. attack, Trump said that the nuclear facilities or the nuclear activities of Iran are obliterated. And on the other side of the coin, the Iranians are saying that even if this happened, still the journey is still that long and nothing is going to hinder us from developing our nuclear facilities or nuclear activities for peaceful reasons, as of course they say. How do you see these words? Now we started psychological war in addition to the war on the ground, or this is the way or the expected manner both sides should act?
Yes, another good question. I mean, the psychological war has been going on for years between Iran and the rest of the world, actually. And we know that Iran has itself tried not to really confess of severe damage to its nuclear program. Now, there have been conflicting reports of what damage was inflicted by the raids of the B-2 stealth bombers that the U.S. sent to hit the nuclear sites.
Yeah.
Iran says no damage whatsoever. The U.S. says, well, they were totally annihilated. Nobody knows for certain, except perhaps intelligence reports that we're not very familiar with. So let's wait and see.
Yeah, let's wait and see. But let's wait and see, as you've kindly mentioned in our answering my first question regarding the scenarios. The scenarios are not for the best interest of the region if they are not going to listen to the voice of reason, as I also said. But sir, one final question regarding the draft which was introduced by China, Russia and Pakistan. As we speak, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is in Moscow and is in direct contact with the top officials there in the Russian capital. Do you think that Russia in specific is going to play a bigger role in the current situation, or it's going to be only among the three countries we mentioned introducing only this draft to the UN Security Council, and as you also kindly mentioned, wait and see?
Iran has always been claiming to be listening to and abiding with the UN resolutions, but this time, I mean, I think it's a bit far and away from the United Nations. It should be involving the parties talking together on the negotiating table. Russian and Chinese involvement, I might add, in the conflict. Perhaps they might help, but it all depends on the U.S. really, because the U.S. has the upper hand when it comes to continuing the strikes or not, to urging Israel to continue its strikes or not. So the situation is really escalating every minute, and I'm not sure, really, nobody knows if Russia or China would be able to do something really useful here.
Now I'm done with Iran, sir, but if you permit me, I'd like to mention that it was such a nice gesture from the French envoy to the UN yesterday in the UN Security Council meeting that he mentioned in his speech Gaza. And he said that we should not direct all our attention to what's going on between Israel and Iran and forget about the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza, and making sure that this also is something which we should intervene and put an end to, because of the starvation of more than 2 million people and those who are living in such a blockade. And in my humble opinion, it's one of the factors, it's one of the things in mind of the Israeli administration, just to take the attention of what they are doing in Gaza with using starvation as a weapon against civilians, with now having the aid centers as killing and assassination traps for women and children. Mentioning this at that very critical time, how do you evaluate that?
Well, you're absolutely right, madam. I mean, we've all witnessed, of course, Macron's visit to Egypt, and he's going to the borders with Israel, and the French stance when it comes to the dire situation in Gaza and what's happening there. Unfortunately, how this works is that whenever we have an escalation in a war, the other situation sort of gets behind the scenes. I mean, what happens between Russia and Ukraine if the war escalates? Well, everybody forgets about Gaza. When we have the strikes going on between Israel and Iran, everybody forgets what's happening in Gaza. So unfortunately, this is how it works internationally. It is whenever we have a calamity somewhere, the other calamities are forgotten temporarily. Now,
Yeah.
we as Arabs, we as Egypt, of course, we do not forget about the Gaza situation. Egypt has a very special situation with Gaza. We have been involved in this for years. They are our neighbors. We have the Palestinian cause as one of our priorities. But I might mention that Europeans are not in control. I mean, whenever somebody speaks about Gaza and Israel, I say that the U.S. is the only force that can really put some pressure on the Israeli side.
Let's pray and let's cross our fingers that tomorrow is going to be a better day and we are going to enjoy peace, sir, because as we also said that the planet itself cannot endure another war. We were very much delighted to have with us via phone Ambassador Youssef Zada, member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for your input, sir, and right after the short break we are going to return back with more, so stay tuned.